What's the closest thing that you'd have as a job title?
Probably. Is video maker a real job title?
Or content creator? I've heard that one going around.
Yeah, probably content creator.
Or artist? Would you say you're an artist?
Yeah.
Like more than a content creator?
I think content creator is like the universal term now. But I make all sorts of stuff. But it's all in the sort of realm of miniatures and D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and Warhammer stuff.
So how did you get started in that?
So I've been in the miniature hobby since maybe 10 or so, making stuff with my brother, watching him, learning to paint through him. So it's been a massive part of, teenage, young adulthood. And I really wanted to share all the sort of lessons and stuff I'd learned with other people.
Yeah, cool. Well, why do you think that you've stuck with miniatures all these years and are now making content for it online?
I guess for me, miniatures is a hobby where I can combine all my different interests together into one platform. So I can express myself artistically. I can do narrative writing. I can play with technology like 3D printing and all that sort of stuff. And it's really just an excuse to sort of explore all these other interests, video making, all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, true. It is that real like melting pot of all these different things. Even graphic design with your, the books that you've got here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
it's 100%. I just use it as a tool to explore all my creative endeavors and then have an audience to sort of enjoy that, which is sort of a unique thing that doing YouTube and social stuff has. I can explore different things and there's always sort of an audience to respond to it.
Yeah, that's really nice. But you've, it's. I don't see when I think of you, I think of not just the miniatures, but all these kind of different things pop into my head with photography, graphic design, 3D.
Yeah, well, I mean, initially, I think my pathway was I want to do 3D animation, and then I sort of started exploring photography, and then I found using my camera for video to be a little bit more interesting. So, and even wanting to learn 3D independently started with wanting to sculpt miniatures as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Because this was very early in school and we were learning Maya, and immediately I was like, this would be awesome to sculpt miniatures with. I never got very far though. That wasn't something until later in life where I sort of things started clicking a bit more.
Okay. Well, going over to miniatures or even YouTube videos, what goes into that? Do you think of the build first or do you think of the video first?
So typically what I make now is content for videos primarily, and then everything produced from that is all secondary, and that gets used at my local clubs and all that sort of stuff. So when I make a video, it's sort of centered around wanting to teach something. So a new skill I've learned or a problem I've had to overcome, and then I'll try to focus a lesson or a build around that. I think the thing with miniatures is so much of it is problem solving, patching things and sticking band-aids on top of band-aids. And when that sort of happens, it gives you all sorts of ideas of video content and different lessons that you want to teach people. Even just like a lesson about problem solving, everyone is everyone's sort of in the hobby for different reasons. So some people really like painting miniatures, some people like building things, some people like playing the game, some people like role-playing, like Dungeons and Dragons. So sharing my interest in the hobby and trying to help people get into those different interests in this big, broader subject is where a lot of the content comes from.
Miniatures, there's pretty broad subjects. So by splitting it off and having the different segments, people can kind of start to gravitate towards something specific. And I think it's cool that it sounds like you initially started with more of a traditional how to build this particular thing, but then it transitioned to maybe more of the lessons that you learned along the way, like you said, the problem solving. So what made you move to that instead, like focusing more about the lessons and problem solving?
I think it just started with everything that I've been learning, like everything that's in my hobby, I've picked up from other people. So I think a massive part of the hobby is sharing what you learn with other people in club environments, on forums, on social media. It's a massive part of the community is discovering new things and telling people about them. And there's a 1,000 ways of approaching every problem, and in this hobby, it's the exact same.
Yeah.
So I think everyone in the hobby is sort of a teacher. Like you're learning from all your peers all the time,
sharing knowledge.
Yeah, and just having YouTube videos to sort of frame that in a consumable way was the goal.
Yeah. Do you get burnout on projects, or have you ever started a project and thought, I can't finish this, like it's gone on for too long and you've fallen out of love with it, or you just don't like it?
Yeah.
How do you overcome that? Do you get burnout?
Yeah, a lot. Not so much now. Because that's been like a big thing that I've had to sort of try to overcome and understand myself a little bit more to avoid that. But a big problem for me was sort of chasing that like new project high, like that initial excitement of starting something. And you're like, oh, this is awesome, and I can work all night on it. And then the next day you might feel like that too. Then the day after, when more and more challenges are presented to you and you're like, oh, this is a bit of a slog and the end is further and further out of sight. And I think that's a easy trap to fall into with these projects, especially as you learn and want to push yourself. You want to do more and more ambitious things. But for me recently, I think an important part of my process was trying to understand where things start to fall apart and recognizing that, and then working out, okay, is there a way I can keep a project together? Is there a way I can make it less ambitious? Is there someone I can bring on to help me? Is there any corners I can cut? But that's taken a little bit to get there first. There's been a lot of abandoned projects.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I could see. I mean, I've been like that so much in the past where I'm like, I can do this, and it's like, you take off this massive bite, but then the interest just, because there's so much stuff out there. You go and look on any kind of art website, and so many different tools and so many programs, and just overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that we can learn, I guess. Is that the same way with miniatures? I
think so. Yeah.
Flooded with inspiration.
Yeah. Social media is such a trap, because you're on there and you see someone's brilliant idea and you're like, that inspires another project I could do, or I want to do that but better, or I want to try that out. But now I try to incorporate some of those things into the projects I'm working on. We'll see if I can push things further, or try to give myself shorter deadlines to push stuff out. So that I can get on to the next thing when that comes.
Yeah. Do you give yourself deadlines?
Yeah, they're very loose. I'm at the moment, I try to make a video. I try to make 3 videos every month. That's sort of the goal.
Okay.
Which sort of gives me room to explore things for a bit, and also put out content which has to sustain an audience. But having the pressure of putting out a video really helps get projects done. It's also a massive hindrance, because when you're shooting, it takes so much more time than just actually getting on with a project as well. And those like midnight bursts of inspiration where you're like, oh, I could just work on this thing quickly. And then you're like, oh, but I also have to set up the camera and the lighting and make sure everything's nice and empty my SD cards and make sure my battery's charged, you know.
That's an interesting point, actually. Yeah.
It's a blessing and a curse, I think. But for me, I think it's the only way I'd be so invested in the hobby is by being able to share it with as many people as I can at the moment.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's good motivation to have so many people, you know, care about what you're doing, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure to want to do good and want to keep impressing them and stuff. If like a comment's like, oh, this is the best thing you've ever done, you're like, I hope I can keep this up.
Do you feel like you're trying to appease everyone that's watching, or do you feel like you're staying true to yourself?
Yeah.
Is that a balance, or yeah?
For sure. Yeah. Everything I do comes from like a genuine interest, full stop. It's like the thing I'm most excited about. And then I might shift and reframe things so then it's good content for my audience. It's like, I'm working on a project that I really want to do, but I need to put out a video. How can I frame it in a way that my audience might appreciate? What's a lesson in here that I've learned or needed to overcome? What's an exciting new material that I want to share, or a process or something like that?
Yeah, I think the reason why I like your videos so much and videos of a similar transparent structure is because you feel like you're going on the journey with you. You know, you're not coming from this, pedestal position where everyone's looking up to you, which, maybe they are, but I feel like I'm more there with you,
I think everyone in the hobby, just actively in the hobby, there's lessons you can learn from just about everyone as well. So really wanting to frame things like I'm just a person enjoying my hobby rather than maybe my peers who take more of a teacher approach, where it's like, I'm the authority, I have the expertise, so I've learned all this stuff, now this is how I do it, type thing. And I don't necessarily want to come across that way.
Yeah, it was probably just your like natural humility, maybe.
That's very nice. But no, I don't know. I think it's just how I want to be taught too. It's also you want to be. You don't want someone to tell you from a position of it's nice being spoken to as an equal. Yeah, I mean, it's like school. Like there's the cool teachers and stuff, and you feel like they really understand you, and they're human and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. We're talking about mentors and inspiration. Are you channeling any of our high school teachers?
I don't think so.
Maybe subconsciously. Who knows?
Maybe. There's been a lot of impactful people in my life. I think the biggest thing is just kind people willing to give up their time to teach stuff, and that's sort of what I want to do.
Yeah, I think talking about being a kid, what's your earliest creative memory?
Probably as a kid playing with Lego, and after you build the thing with the instruction manual, going ahead and mashing everything that you have up into new things. I had like a whole city system that I built, and all my friends had characters and stuff in it. This is all like this is all very close to like what we're actually doing now, but on the very young. But yeah, there was like item shops and all this sort of stuff, and that was all from watching my brother play like Final Fantasy,
nice,
and all the old RPGs, and being like, oh, I want to do that. And with my best friends, we had like a big rule book of like all items you could buy in shops and how much they would cost and all the jobs and stuff that you could do and classes. And yeah, it's actually quite exciting thinking about how that sort of progressed to where I am now.
Yeah, it's totally correlated.
But my best friend Sam and I, we saw my older brother playing Warhammer, and we're like, oh, we totally want to do that. So we developed rules and stuff to play Warhammer on a very basic level on our pool table using Lego pieces and like Lego sets for terrain. And we had dice that I think we got from a board game from school. I don't know how. Yeah. Yeah. Sticky Fingers Sam. Probably nicked him. But yeah, nice. we had this whole system and like a points buying system. So like it was sort of fair what we were doing. And then we just played these games out all day long.
That's awesome. Really, yeah. It sounds like you're talking about now.
Yeah, I haven't thought about this in a little while.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's always interesting seeing what you're naturally kind of inclined to do as a kid and kind of how that relates to your career, I guess.
Sure. You know? Yeah, well, I mean, talking about like the role model thing, it's like my brother, 100%, he was like my idol. It's like, big brother, you want to do what he does.
Yeah.
I guess you're the older brother in your family, so it's like you're the. Yeah. I'm sure your little brother feels the same way, whether he tells you or not. But it's just, you know.
Yeah, it was his birthday the other day. He just turned 13.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's got long hair and he's super into he's into basketball actually, and that was something that I played as a kid.
Yeah. But my brother, you know, like I'd watch him paint miniatures and stuff like that. And then he would let me sometimes. I remember spilling paint all over his carpet. My mum was so mad.
Oh, my God.
But, you know, and I have my own garage now and I can make as much mess as I want.
Yeah. How is your garage coming along anyway? I haven't seen it for a while.
It's in a constant state of mess, but it's okay because you always just frame the videos in the cleanest area. So then you just push all the mess to the other side. So there's a lot I want to do with that space.
What do you have planned? What do you want to do? What's your ideal space for that garage?
I really want to turn it into like a set piece to sort of inspire all the creations and stuff, and have places to put props and sculpts and stuff that I do around the place. At the moment, I want to get old bookcases and fill them up with stuff, but cut them up so they're odd compartments and make everything a bit silly.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Not at all practical, but you know, I think there's a bit of a balance between practicality and making everything arty and fun.
Yeah. That was. I remember there was that video that you had where there was the 3D composite of the set behind you.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say you can just virtual production like Unreal Engine style and just have.
We're nearly there. We're
real time kind of. And
I've looked at so many of those tutorials that are like how to do this at home. Yeah, it's not quite the same as those $1 million
couple of LED walls.
Yeah.
Have a Mandalorian set in your garage.
Yeah, I've looked at doing all like the camera tracking stuff.
Oh, really?
Like how fast can I do this? Like, what is this realistic? But no, it's no. No matter, you know, well, if I learn and then I practice, and then by the end, no, I'd end up hating the process, I think. But I would love to do like a series of sort of frame things as a tutorial, but also make it a bit narrative too, and sort of project myself into like fantasy lands and stuff. Like maybe I'm actually visiting these places that's inspiring these sculpts or concepts or something like that. Something Very
That
silly.
sounds
And
awesome.
then I could have like all my friends that are in the hobby as like cameos and stuff as people that aren't them. Like,
Yeah, hell yeah, this is awesome.
yeah, that'd be my goal one day.
Yeah, nice. Well, you got the perfect space for it. That's yeah.
My goal is eventually. Now you got me on a bit of a tangent, but my goal eventually.
This whole podcast is a tangent.
My goal eventually would be to have studio space in town, because I don't really want to be working from home all the time, especially when things go back to normal. I'll feel very lonely again. So I would like to have a studio space in town, and then if I could afford it one day, I would get a shop front, and I would turn
we've talked about this before actually. The shop front part,
I'd turn the shop front into like an old antique bookshop.
This is the evolution of that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool,
yeah. Turn into like an antique bookshop, but have it so like the bookshop is always closed. And then like in the displays of the window, just have like really obscure, weird book titles. Like just made up books. So people walking by are like, what is this place and why is it never open?
What? There's money laundering going on?
Yeah, and that was my next thought. Is just, I'd have the police knocking up.
I love the concept of owning a bookstore that's always closed.
Yeah, and then behind it is like actual studio space. But that would be the goal, that I could eventually turn it into a club space too. Because where we are, our club, we're very fortunate to have a lovely space donated to us by a local pub, which we play on top of, and we have quite a good deal going on with them. But if something ever happened, my goal would be to have a studio space that I could also allow people to use as a club environment on the weekends.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's good goal to work towards. Do you think like that? Do you think goal? Do you think goals? Do you have kind of long-term or short-term goals that you try and achieve?
Yeah, 100%. So, short-term goals, it's just like finish the projects that are on my plate at the moment, and get them out. And then long-term goals, it's like wanting to have things like the studios, but also because clubs are so important to me and so sort of significant in how I got into the hobby and how my hobby was sort of nurtured and supported through like my schooling and all that sort of stuff. I would really like long term, I would like to be able to help other people open clubs up, because the process that we went through to open up the club was pretty involved and pretty difficult, and we had to find our own funding and stuff like that. So long term, I would like to make that process easier for people in surrounding areas where they need it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How would you go about doing that? Just kind of guiding them along the way and telling them all the things that you learnt? And
I don't know. I would like to do it as like one day having it as like a charitable organization to like help kickstart clubs and stuff like that. Be able to provide that funding.
Yeah.
Because even like you think about the initial cost of starting up the club, there was legal fees and stuff like that, but we also had to get our tables and terrain and a space to play and pay rent for that, and it's a lot for just a couple of people that you're not sure whether you can get enough interest in your surrounding area. So if I can make that process easier, that will be the goal eventually.
Yeah, that's such a noble pursuit. That's really nice. Do you feel like do you feel growth in this area? Have you noticed more people kind of getting involved in it than a few years ago?
I think so. I think initially, like early on in my club days, the club was just run by one guy, and he was going back to idols and stuff. He was like my idol in the hobby. Like he had his own club, and everyone loved him because you did so much for the community and the hobby. That sort of running a club all by himself had a lot of impact, and there was a lot of stress and there's a lot of organization. So talking to my friends, we were like, we really need a club in town that is sort of run by a committee and people that have the same amount of interest and can contribute same amount of time and resources as everyone else. So, so I think that's why things are going a lot better for us now, is because we have that community aspect at the forefront. It's all run by like-minded people.
That's really nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is really awesome. But it's all because everyone is so committed, Everyone, it all happens because everyone in that committee wants to see a club grow and be nurtured and invest whatever they can into it. And the scene's growing because of it, I think. And we're really fortunate in our club. All the kinds of people that we've brought in that have been in the hobby for different amounts of times and in different eras, and bring all sorts of cool old games to the table and old miniatures and old ideas I think we're sort of the club environment that we have is sort of like an outlier. I think it's very rare that you get the diversity that we have. So it's very exciting.
Oh man, super exciting. Talking about kind of this as a career and things. When did you first kind of think that, okay, I could probably keep doing this and sustain myself? Did you think of this terrain as a career, or do you now? Where's the future?
So I've always sort of juggled lots of freelance projects. So doing 3D design, animation, VFX, and then doing all the hobby stuff on the side. But ever since COVID, that took a bit of a hit. So I was like, this is a great opportunity just to see if I can do it and then eventually sustain myself from it. But yeah, it's been going really good. It's like the jumping off point I needed.
No, that's awesome. If you can turn your hobby into your job, like that's the dream, I suppose.
Yeah, I think for most people in the hobby, that would be their dream. But it's also, I think, the sad reality is that a lot of the creators in the space too has had like a negative impact on their hobby. They might not enjoy their hobby as much because it becomes their job. Or the days that they don't want to paint miniatures, they have to paint miniatures. Or
you said like this has been kicking you into gear with COVID and things, but has it felt like more of a chore in recent times, or does it still feel like it's your hobby?
No, 100% still feels like a hobby. Like I get up every morning and I'm excited, but I think that's because of how diverse the stuff that I've been doing is.
Yeah, that's a good shout then.
Every new video is a totally different subject and uses a different skill set, and it talks about a different part of my hobby and what I've learned, and it's all very reflective. So I try to talk a lot about my thought process, creative process in my videos, and that's always changing. So there's always something that really excites me to talk about. But I think for me, because I make my videos with that sort of vulnerability of like, I'm not an expert, I make mistakes, and I'm fumbling my way through this hobby just like most people that are watching me. I think that makes it easy to talk about those things. While if I was more of like a teacher, it's like I have to be one step ahead of my audience all the time.
I appreciate coming from that kind of perspective. There's this YouTuber I watch, Sean Tucker. Have you heard of him before?
No.
He's I'll send you a link. You'd really like him, but his videos, he posts them very infrequently, but he's comes from that real place of vulnerability, and he talks about he has this inner monologue that goes on through his videos and while he teaches the lessons, and I really appreciate you feel like you're really there with him and you're on the journey. So I like that perspective.
Yeah, well, I really do too. I think that's a bit of a shift that I've noticed recently with YouTube in general. There's a lot of the, like, if you look at like cooking channels like Bon Appetit and stuff, so much of it is framed at a personal level. It's like, this is a cooking tutorial, but it's also things go wrong and problems happen and they need to be solved. And sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. But at all those videos, there is a resolution. And I think that's important with the content that I'm creating, that there is always a resolution. That what I'm doing is always about overcoming something by the end. And I think that just makes for a good video because there's that narrative there.
Absolutely. Well, then do you want to talk about YouTube for a sec then?
Okay.
How is it making things on YouTube? Do you compare your success to others, or how do you deal with that? Is it what's the community like? Do you ever feel competitive, or is it what's the vibe?
So in our space, it's like everyone's sort of friends with everyone.
I can imagine, if it's anything like the miniatures clubs.
But I think that's also hard too, because when your best friends are doing really, really well suddenly one week, that can be hard, or it's like they do a similar topic and they do exceptionally well, or, it's, the hardest thing with YouTube is that it honestly seems like videos go big for no rhyme or reason as well. So when things happen, it's hard not to be envious of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Totally. I definitely have my envious moments. How do you deal with it, do you think?
I mean, probably not very well. But I think that's something that everyone's struggled with, because everyone sort of gets their turn in the limelight, and then when things aren't doing as well, you have to watch everyone else take that turn. But I think now it's been more of like a topic of conversation in our friendship groups and stuff. It's like, make sure you're looking out for everyone. It might be your turn in the spotlight now, but that changes. And when you're feeling good, someone else might not be. So making sure everyone is okay and everyone is involved, I think, is a massive part of things now, which is sort of weird to think about, but it's just because there's so much success and so many great creators.
Yeah. When you're talking to someone and they are succeeding, and you do have that genuine, like, you're so happy for them, and that it is such a good feeling when you can get that to that point. But if perhaps when the envy does kick in, it's like, how do you deal with that?
It's hard.
But like I said, when it does happen, when it's the other way around and they are successful and you're happy for them, it's like that's a really good feeling, because you feel like you're kind of connected to their success in some kind of way. Sometimes with people that I admire.
I definitely I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's like when I feel sad, I let people know. But and everyone is so supportive and caring, and I think so much of YouTube, probably the most important thing that we've found is having a network for each other, because everyone was sort of previously independent, but now we've got a big group Discord and stuff where we can chat and work through things and laugh at bad comments and all that sort of stuff together, and make each other feel good. And when I've had bad days and stuff, and everyone contacts you and says, give me a ring and just want to make sure you're okay.
That's nice.
It's nice. And if I was going through YouTube by myself, I think I probably wouldn't be where I am now, because I just wouldn't want to do it, because otherwise it'd be very lonely.
Yeah.
Because nobody else really understands the problems that you go through, or
They're very unique problems, I think.
Yeah.
What's it like? What's an example of a problem that someone wouldn't
Sure.
maybe like negative comments or something?
Yeah. Well, negative comments can get you down for sure.
Do you see that? Do you when you? I mean, the saying is when you see a million good comments and you see one negative comment, you'll focus on that. Is that true for you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And in the last probably 2 months, I gave myself a rule when the channel when I was putting out lots of content and the channel was getting bigger. I decided that any negative comment, I'm not going to respond to it until every positive comment is responded to, because why do they deserve my time over the people that have lovely things to say?
Yeah.
And that has helped so much. Like, it's totally changed my mindset. But,
That's
other
cool.
creators and stuff, they like doing the witty comebacks and all that sort of stuff. But it all takes time, and it's not something I want to invest my time in anymore.
Yeah. Do you read them all, or are you able to ignore the comments?
I read every single comment that gets sent to me, and I reply to. I always make an effort to reply to a question. Okay. So it's like, what material are you using? Where can I find this? All that sort of stuff. And because it's like these are new people in the hobby, I want to make sure that they're catered for. But actually responding to every single person is no longer a possibility, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. That would be quite time consuming.
I just invest my time in Patreon mostly. So if someone messages me on Patreon, it's like they're the people.
That'd be such a good feeling, having people they follow you that much that they want to support what you're doing.
Yeah,
your own personal hobby.
When like the notification pops up that someone's bought a product or something that I've made that I've worked really hard on, that's really, really lovely.
Yeah.
And
I suppose it's nice knowing, because it's like if you're buying something like that, I suppose you probably know that it's going back into the content that you're consuming. It's just going to make your videos better.
Yeah, well, that's what I try to do. Invest it all back into the hobby, getting more. So next, so I'm saving my money for molding and casting equipment to mold and cast my own miniatures to be able to sell and send off to people around the world.
Oh, cool.
So that's the next thing, and that's what I'm really excited for.
Nice.
And then when I get that will be the next series, working through those problems. So it all circles back.
Everything's
everything's content.
Well, what's next? What else do you want to learn? What other tools? You said you wanted to get those tools that you're saving up for, but is there anything else that you want to learn? Any programs? Any techniques?
I think the next progression is I want to experiment with format a bit more, like video format. That's something that I do every so often is try a different way of formatting videos, or reflecting on things based on what's trending on YouTube, or just trying to get ahead of my peers and all that sort of stuff. But I think now it's like I'm realizing so much talent is popping up in my space on YouTube that it's like I need to refine the actual video making process again, so my stuff doesn't get stale, and then people just want to go to the next person. So
what's the next step?
More cinematic stuff. I think I want to do like long form content eventually, documentary style stuff, and make it not necessarily about me, but other people in my community that I admire or I think are interesting characters or something like that.
Yeah,
because cool. Like, the hobby is filled with them.
Yeah, I can imagine. What would be an example of something cinematic with the terrain?
It would have to be that big narrative focus thing. So, for example, one thing I want to do is I have a friend who is in the terrain making space, in the commission space, and he'll be making lots of terrain for a tournament coming up, like a crazy amount. So for me, that cinematic thing would be doing that documentary style
I see.
About someone else, and having that narrative that goes along with those documentaries that you invest in the people that you're watching emotionally, for better or worse.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But I don't want to just make content about me forever. 'Cause, yeah. I only I make content about me because that's what I have access to. But if I had someone in my space next door, I would be filming them.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Cool. That'd be. I look forward to hearing about that as it progresses.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you've got lots of short and long-term goals to build towards, so that's awesome. Well, thanks very much, Trent. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your wise words and walking me through what you do and your passions and your hobbies. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime, hit me up.
Sweet. How's tomorrow?
All right.
We'll do the whole thing again.
We'll talk about it. All right. Bye.
Bye.